Well, hey, everybody, it's Lisa, and I'm so glad to talk to you again. We're going to be talking about the foundation or the base of the hierarchy of homeschool needs, and this has to do with the principal. And again, the principal has to do with high-level strategy. That means determine your pedagogy. What is a pedagogy? It is how will you study? What's important to you? And this has to do with different kinds of methodology. Are you Charlotte Mason? Are you classical? Are you eclectic? Are you unschooling? And really, you don't have to have a well understood or defined pedagogy before you start homeschooling, but the chances are you have one operating in the back of what's going on in your homeschool, whether you're really aware of it or not. So I think it's so helpful to read up on different methodologies of education because they all have hallmarks that are super helpful and really good to think about. Classical education has the trivium, the grammar stage, the dialectic stage, and the rhetoric stage. Charlotte Mason talks about like habit forming and great books and literature. Unschooling, like the traditional unschooling with John Holt, has to do with really being more delight directed and student driven education and all of these things. And if you're a textbook, that has to do with like just really going with the typical course of study that a public school would determine for you. But all of them have different focuses and agendas. And again, you can start homeschooling without really having a good idea of any of that. But I would really encourage you to read up on some of it because you might find that you get really excited about a certain pedagogy and you really want to like embrace that and bring more of the pieces of that pedagogy into your homeschool. You might find that it's really enriching to you and your kids. And again, I would just encourage you to read up on some of those great methodologies of education. So not only are you as the principal really deciding what kind of pedagogy, how will you study, but you also really would be helpful to you to understand what is a typical course of study. Now, I've done a lot of writing on this and speaking about this, about what a typical course of study is, and it really has to do with the core four, and you're going to focus on that K through 12th if you're, doing traditional education, and that is English, math, science, and history. When your kids are in early elementary, really the two to focus on are English and math, and really getting the foundations of literacy, number literacy, and language literacy. But once they are able to read and once they are able to count, then you can move on to more complex ideas with that, right? But all the way through until 12th grade and even beyond, your kids are going to really focus on the core four, again, English, math, science, and history. You want to add in foreign language, Bible study, electives, those kinds of things. That's just the core. So if you're ever having a bad day or a bad year or a bad decade, you can just fall back to those core four and you're going to be fine. If you really educate your kids in those areas, they're going to be well-rounded, educated people in society. And that's really part of the goal of education, right? So understanding what is a typical course of study. And then the other thing that the principal or the manager is going to really want to focus on is where is my student going to go after high school? Now, I've worked with homeschool families for years, really over a decade at this point. And one thing I've noticed about most parents is that they have a really pretty good idea of where their kids are going to go after high school. It might not be really focused and narrowed down, like they're going to go to this school and study that thing, or they're going to go to a vo-tech school, or they're going to go military, but they have a pretty good idea. Are your kids capable of going to college? Can you afford it? Are you going to go to a 2-year degree? Are they going to club out? Most parents have some kind of idea about what their kid is capable post high school. And really, parents, you probably have a better idea than your kids do because you have more life experience. You understand what higher education is. You understand what the world of work is like. And so you need to start having those kind of discussions with your kids. Where do you see yourself after high school? This is maybe where I see you. How does that fit together? But as the principal or manager, you're going to be the person who decides where you're going to try to lead your students to post high school. Now, also, you're not only just doing high level strategy, but you're doing strategic planning. You're planning the academics. And the academics aren't just necessarily picking curriculum, but it is deciding what classes your students will study every year, not just what classes, but how much time they'll put into it and the kind of rigor that is going to be attached to those classes. So once your kids hit high school, you're going to want to do like a credit of English a year. A credit is roughly 120 hours. I go really in depth in this with some of the other workshops that I do. And I'm not going to go too far into that now, but you as a principal are going to determine how much, how intense the class is and how much time your students are going to put into it. You're also going to determine what curriculum you want to use, who's going to teach the material, and you have some options here, especially now. There's never been a better time to homeschool your kids. You can homeschool them. You can actually do the subject material work yourself. Your student can do self-study, and there's so many different ways and resources for them to do that. Or you can outsource to a co-op, a class day, a tutor, an online program like we offer at True North Homeschool Academy, dual enrollment, AP, etc. So again, you have a plethora of opportunities and options available to you. Also, as the principal or manager, you are going to determine what kind of activities your kids are going to be involved in. And that might be something that you want to think about year to year. Like you might have a kid who's really into sports one year, you might have a kid who's really into landscaping one year, but or horseback riding or debate or whatever. But let me tell you, as somebody who had a whole bunch of kids at one time in the house, those outside activities, they take time and money and intention. So as the principal, you just want to weigh all those options. How much does everything cost as far as time and money goes? Do you have those resources to put into them? I would say as the principal and as the manager, you're the one who's going to decide what is your guiding principle and why for home educating. I've shared this so many times before, but our guiding principle and our why for home education has to do with this quote by Will and Ariel Durant, who were great educators of the last century. And they said, education is the transmission of culture. And I firmly believe that everybody from the Catholic Church to Adolf Hitler buys into that too, right? If you can educate a young group of people, you determine not just this generation, but the next generation. So education, when you educate, you are actually transmitting a culture. I really believe in a culture of truth, beauty, and goodness. So that was always really the focus of our homeschool. We wanted to transmit a faith-based culture that was based on decency and again, truth, beauty, and goodness. Okay, so I did just make a quick list of pedagogies you might want to look into, and these have to do with different ways of thinking about how you're going to educate. There's the classical pedagogy, unschooling, Charlotte Mason, great books or literature-based, textbook, unit study, and eclectic. So you might want to just do some research on those types of pedagogies. And again, a typical course of study, your core four are going to be math, English, science, and history, Bible and humanities, foreign language, PE, and electives. One of the things I want to just really encourage you to do as you think about homeschooling is how can you prioritize and how can you systematize? So priorities just mean determine the order of dealing with a series of tasks, and systemization has to do with arranging those tasks according to an organized system so that you can rinse and repeat. Now, with homeschooling, you always have this tension between people and relationships and tasks and getting things done. So you might want to prioritize and systematize, but then you always need to be aware of the relationships and how is that going to all work together. But things that you can prioritize, are faith formation, character development, academic prowess, vocational direction, mental health, physical well-being, interpersonal skills, and life skills. And it seems like a lot, but so much of them go hand in hand. I'm not one of those educators who says, put the books away and focus on character, because so much of character can be taught through academics. Like, look, if your kid's doing a Latin program, they are learning character development by not quitting, by not giving up. Now, you don't want to make your kids cry all the time, and you don't want to be crying all the time. So again, you need to just develop this healthy balance between relationships and tasks. You want to prioritize. You're not just raising kids, you're raising adults. And if you're a faith-based person, you also realize that you're raising a spiritual being. Okay, you guys, that's it for the principal part of the hierarchy of homeschool needs. And again, this is the most foundational piece of the hierarchy. And if you get this taken care of, often the things that you struggle with and the other parts of the hierarchy are going to take care of themselves. So I hope this has been helpful to you, and I will be back later to talk about the second level of the hierarchy.